How many times are parents expected to hear the phrase, "we didn't know," before they finally stop trusting people running these depraved school trips? Because that's exactly the excuse used once again for exposing kids to utter vulgarity.
It's a fun show. It will leave you laughing, gasping, and talking a lot after you leave.
According to a story broken first by Just Bins, the Regina garbage company dubbed the most reliable news outlet in Saskatchewan, a Regina high school took students to a Globe Theatre production called Little Red Warrior and His Lawyer. The performance was marketed as a satirical farce meets spicy rom-com tied to curriculum outcomes and cultural exploration. But according to students in a follow-up message sent home by the school, the performance escalated so far beyond expectations that teachers pulled students out early. One student described a drag performer, quote, putting their boobs in kids' faces, end quote, while some students were reportedly crying. And now administrators are scrambling to reassure parents that staff acted with professional discretion. Well, thank God somebody in the room finally did. But here's the bigger issue. Why are schools constantly walking children into activist theater productions wrapped in vague academic language while parents are kept deliberately in the dark about the actual content of the thing? Read the permission form carefully, and it's a master class in euphemism. Students would engage with multimodal texts. They would analyze style, tone, and structure. They would explore social contexts and cultural backgrounds. Sounds harmless enough and even a little highbrow. But it was anything but highbrow. It was a vulgar, sexually charged hellscape foisted on other people's minor kids. And let's talk about who's paying for all of this stuff. The Globe Theatre production wasn't some fringe underground performance in a warehouse somewhere. It was backed by major corporate sponsors, crown corporations, including the feds, universities, tourism agencies, and taxpayer-linked funding bodies. The play itself was sold to schools as an educational exploration of Indigenous rights, resistance, and cultural themes. Fine, if that were true, parents might reasonably expect a serious, dramatic discussion about history, law, or reconciliation.
Tell us all about this amazing production.
Okay, Little Red Warrior and His Lawyer is a wild ride of a show. We follow the story of Little Red, who is the only remaining member of the Little Red Warrior First Nation, who discovers that his land, his ancestral land, is being developed without consent. So he goes to fight, literally, for his land, which gets him into some trouble. He ends up in jail. There he meets Larry the Lawyer, played by Shaker, his court-appointed lawyer. He moves in with Larry the Lawyer and his wife Desdemona, who is also a lawyer, and that's when things really start to get cooking. It's a fun show. It will leave you laughing, gasping, and talking a lot after you leave.
What they apparently got was sexually charged drag performance inserted into a school matinee for minors. That's the bait and switch that I think a lot of people are furious about. Institutions wrap these productions in the language of social justice, education, cultural awareness, and then use that, I guess, credibility to shield and sneak in activist performance art that many parents would never knowingly approve for their kids. And because the subject matter touches politically protected themes, administrators and sponsors seem to assume nobody is allowed to question it without being smeared as hateful or intolerant. Nowhere does it plainly tell parents their kids could be exposed to drag performance during a daytime school field trip. Because if they wrote that honestly, a lot of parents would absolutely have said no. That's the pattern now, though. Institutions hide controversial ideological content behind sanitized bureaucratic jargon and then act stunned I tells ya, when families object afterward. And spare me the line that this is all about art. Nobody is saying theater shouldn't push boundaries for consenting adults. Adults can buy tickets to whatever weird avant-garde performance they want, but minors on mandatory or school-endorsed trips, well, that's way different. Schools are supposed to educate kids, not immerse them in activist performance art designed to normalize adult sexual politics. And let's be honest about something else here. If this exact behavior happened outside of a theater, if an adult performer, save for something we might see at a pride parade during Pride season, was physically crowding minors in a sexually suggestive way, there wouldn't be a debate about curriculum alignment. People would be furious instantly, and hopefully the cops would be called. But slap the words drag, inclusion, pride, or Indigenous resistance onto it, and suddenly every adult in authority becomes terrified to apply common sense, if they had any to start with. That fear is exactly why parents are losing trust in public education, because too many administrators seem more worried about offending activist groups, and I'm including teachers and their unions in that category, than protecting kids from inappropriate content. The school's follow-up email admits the performance exceeded the advertised maturity rating. You think? Then maybe schools should stop outsourcing judgment to activist arts organizations in the first place. Who could have seen this coming? Except everyone paying attention the last few years. How many times does this have to happen before schools stop parading men in sequin ladies' underpants in front of students? Parents don't want ideological grooming disguised as cultural enrichment. They want honesty. If a production contains sexualized content, say so explicitly. If drag performance is part of the show, say so explicitly. If there's mature audience interaction, like somebody rubbing their fake boobs towards you, say so explicitly. No more hiding behind phrases like thematic exploration to hide perversion. Parents are not the enemy here. They're the ones ultimately responsible for their children and what their children are exposed to. And every time a school pulls a stunt like this, more families realize the adults running these institutions no longer share their values, or worse, they think parents are obstacles to work around rather than partners to respect. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Children are increasingly exposed to sexual politics in the classroom, and it has to stop. To sign our petition, please visit stopclassroomgrooming.com.